Welcome to episode 155 of the Forward 50 podcast, where we interview people over 50 who pursue new direction for their lives. It's an opportunity for men and women to tell their stories, their way, and in their own words. I'm Greg Gerber, the founder of Forward from 50, and your host for today's show. Today I'm privileged to speak with Rebecca Kanable. She's a former journalist who found herself at a crossroads after years of working in a shrinking and increasingly stressful newsroom world. What Rebecca eventually discovered was a calling she never expected, that of helping families prepare for end-of-life decisions as a family services counselor at a cemetery in Wisconsin. It was a thoughtful, honest conversation about work, legacy, grief, and why planning ahead can actually be one of the most generous gifts we can give to the people we love. Here are a few key takeaways from my conversation with Rebecca. First, burnout can be a powerful teacher. Rebecca shared how her journalism career, which was once deeply fulfilling for her, became unsustainable as resources disappeared and expectations grew. Walking away wasn't failure, it was self-preservation. Second, talking about death does not diminish life. Rebecca explained how pre-planning funeral and memorial decisions actually brings peace of mind and helps families avoid confusion, conflict, and emotional overspending later. Third, planning ahead is an act of love. By making decisions in advance, people give their families clarity, reduce stress, and remove the burden of guessing what mom or dad would have really wanted. Fourth, meaningful work often finds us in unexpected ways. Rebecca never set out to work in the death care industry. Conversations, relationships, and life experience gradually pointed her there. Finally, work after 50 can be deeply purposeful. Rebecca described how helping people during vulnerable moments has taught her gratitude, empathy, and the value of honoring every life story. To tell us more about what gives her life meaning and purpose after turning 50, please welcome Rebecca Kanable to the show. Thanks for joining me today, Rebecca. I really appreciate it. How did you come into becoming a family services counselor? That seems like quite the departure from your career as a journalist.
Yes, it is and it isn't. And the short answer that I like to give folks is that working for a newspaper almost killed me, or I go into talking about how newspapers seem to be dying, so I came to the cemetery. But there's a longer version, but I don't know how much detail you want.
Okay. What made you decide to give up journalism?
Working for a newspaper almost killed me. And I'm serious when I say that. Nobody gave me a diagnosis that if I kept working for a newspaper, that would be the end of me. But newspapers especially changed dramatically. And the size of them got smaller. The staffing got smaller. It was a complete turnabout from, I think, when you and I first started out in the business.
It sure did. That has changed dramatically over the years. It is far more stressful to be in the news business than it was ever before. It's just expected that you do so much with a little resources.
And that's just it, yes. Being in a small community paper, the expectations of the readers don't change. And neither do the expectations that you put on yourself, I would say. You want to have the best journalism for your community. You want to have unique cheerleading stories for the community members. You have to be everything because they took your staff away, or they didn't replace your staff.
That's right. I remember working for weekly newspapers, and you worked 9 to 5 to take appointments to work from 5 to 9.
Did you have to do the layout and photos and your own editing as well?
All of that, yes. You were multifunctional, and that was every newspaper I worked with. So what caused you to move in this direction then, to go into helping people who are experiencing some tremendous grief?
I think that COVID got us all thinking about death to some extent. It brought death into the conversation or to the forefront of our minds. As a society, we don't like to talk about death, which is interesting because it's inevitable. It's one of the few guarantees that we have in life.
That's true.
So my approach started with what we call the pre-need side. I didn't necessarily go into it thinking I wanted to help people who immediately had a need for something at a funeral home or a cemetery. I was looking at it more from a pre-need side. And I was introduced to this by my grandparents, who, I want to say in the 80s, planned their own funerals. They had the plots. My grandparents planned everything that they could in advance. Some things just are things you cannot plan in advance, or for one reason or the other. In the case of my grandmother, she was the last of the couple to die. I was there when my mother and my aunt, I believe, met with the funeral director, and we then learned that Grandma Helen didn't want to choose her own casket. That's where she drew the line. And that's common, I think, in pre-need. People do what they can. Just talking about the topic, that's the first step. Just acknowledging, hey, I'm not going to be here forever. And so then what? Do you say, hey, I'm going to do as much as I can so no one else has to deal with this? Or are you going to say, I don't want anything. I don't want a service. I don't need anything at all. And or the next generation can just take care of that. I'm not going to worry about it. So my interest in pre-need came from my grandparents and seeing the amazing gift it was that they had made so many decisions so that the next generation did not have to do that. I don't know what the stats would be. The greatest generation, they took on a lot of responsibility and they took care of a lot of things. So this doesn't surprise me that somebody from the World War II generation would do something like this. But it's amazing. We didn't have to worry about what type of flower. I think she even had some songs picked out. And what a gift that is, that we didn't have to guess, that we didn't have to possibly argue about what did Grandma Helen really want.
Is that because of the people at this age, they are very much not wanting to be a burden on their family?
I think that's part of it. I think they want to get it done so that others don't have to worry about it. And also, one of the key benefits of pre-need planning is that your wishes become known. You can choose your, what we call a marker, a memorial marker. You can choose the wording. You can choose the emblem so that your son or daughter doesn't have to guess. Did mom want a religious emblem on her memorial marker? Did she want an emblem of her cat? Did she want her wedding anniversary date? There's a lot of choices to be made when you go through from start to finish. And going through that on an at-need basis is much more challenging. So I was sold by seeing what Grandma Helen had done. I wasn't there when Grandpa had died because Grandma Helen was still there. But I just thought, what a gift. What a gift that you give to people when you are able to do pre-need planning, that they will not realize that gift fully until you are gone. That's amazing.
The people that you're trying to help.
Yep. And so, going back to COVID, being in the newspaper business, thinking about what should I do with my life, my mom and my aunt both had plots at a cemetery that were purchased by Grandma and Grandpa. So they had their final destination picked out. That wasn't going to be a problem. But I started every phone call, every visit, and I'm not kidding, I would say, so, have you made your funeral plans yet? Now, I come from a family where we just say things. My mom got where I was coming from. Also, I took a break for the holidays. I wouldn't ask about her funeral plans for the holidays. I'd take a break. But that's the kind of, I appreciate that that's the kind of family we are, that we can just talk about things and get things done, maybe, depending on what we're talking about. Yeah.
I wonder if some families would look at that and think that they don't want to have that conversation because the older person will realize his or her life is about to come to an end and they're going to be sad, so we're going to avoid that conversation. Is that true?
I'm sure it is. Yes. There
Okay.
are mothers that I have met with who have told me that their adult sons cannot talk with them about their own, meaning the mother's deaths. These mothers are, it just happens to be that I talked to two of them. They took care of everything here at the cemetery from start to finish. What a gift. And I think in both cases, they told me, my son does not want to acknowledge that there's going to be a day where I will not be here. So they told their sons I took care of it, but they don't want to talk about that. They don't want to go into those details. And I get it. But I've also seen that gift.
I would imagine that pre-planning also helps to avoid any infighting that might be going on or could occur within the family by having mom and dad make the decisions.
Yes. I wouldn't say it negates any infighting, but it sure does help. It sure does help. Because you know the wishes. Sometimes somebody will pass away in the family, and then it almost seems like everybody knew what dad wanted. He would have wanted this. He would have wanted that. And then when it comes time to write the obituary, nobody knows anything. And to be fair, everyone has a different picture and experience with someone than someone else does. Everybody's got unique experiences. So when you take charge of planning for yourself, you know yourself better than anyone else. And you can get the plans that you wanted. After convincing my mom and my aunt to go through and make their plans, I still kept thinking about planning, about encouraging others to take that step, to have those conversations, to put things in writing, to let their wishes be known, and if possible, yes, put some money down, take care of some expenses, because the expenses are only going to increase.
That's right. And then by having it taken care of, you said it before, you're doing a tremendous favor for the family and for the survivors who are going to have to pick up the pieces and then go and try and find all the financial records, etc. And you've already taken care of that. So it is a true gift for your children and other family members.
We have had people come to us, and I understand it. I absolutely understand it. They will say, I didn't know if mom or dad had an insurance policy. Did he have more than one? Who was it with? How long is it going to take to get that money? In many instances, we call it the death care industry, funeral homes and cemeteries will look for that money up front, 2 business days. So in some instances, you got to have a good cash flow.
That makes sense. And without the pre-planning, aren't you opening the door for the death industry to take advantage of people when they are really emotional? By wouldn't dad want this uber expensive casket or mom want this magnificent flower arrangement, etc.?
Yes, I think that's just it. And maybe it's not the industry. Maybe it's yourself too. You feel guilt. I should have been nicer to mom. I'm going to get her a better flower arrangement. She deserves better. Deserves a big party. I don't know that celebration of life is the most favorite term, but I'm going to pull a quote from my mom. I'm going to misquote her, and I'll have to decide if she should listen. But we're celebrating, for those who have faith, we're celebrating the next step. Sometimes that's
a celebration, really. For a lot of people, it's an end to suffering, and that's a celebration.
Yep.
And a new life, and that's worth celebrating, in addition to the life that they lived here and the example that they set.
Yes.
Super. So what do you do for family as a family service counselor?
That is an excellent question. When I first started out, I struggled with how to explain what I do. And I started thinking about King of the Hill, that TV show cartoon, where
Yeah.
he would talk about propane and propane accessories. How do I explain what I do in a short sentence that probably needs much more time? So at first, I may or may not have said, I sell plots and plot accessories. That was a horrible response. Part of what I do is education, educating people what's available today. Working at a cemetery, I should maybe say also that being here in Wisconsin, funeral homes and cemeteries are separate. In Wisconsin, you cannot own both a funeral home and a cemetery. So everything that I help with is cemetery based. I'm at Roselawn Memorial Park here, 60 acres, and I help with anything that people may need. It might be a plot, it might be something else. What I ultimately realized is I am in the peace of mind business. And I realized this when one Saturday, we do have Saturday hours, work till about 2 o'clock on Saturday. I got home, I listened to a message. It was a long day, and 4:30 or so, I received a message that said a woman wanted to make sure that her plots are ready. Her plots were ready for her and her husband. That statement gave me more questions than it did answers. And so I tried to think about like how to handle this. Should I drive back? Ultimately, I decided to go in the next morning, check out the paper file. We have a combination of paper files and digital files, but the best way to really check what everyone has taken care of is to go to the paper file. So this woman had mentioned in the phone message that her husband was in the hospital. So when I picked up the phone and I called on Sunday morning, I didn't get her, I got him. He was in the hospital. And I think the message had said that he was dying. Maybe it didn't. But the implication she almost gave was that they both needed those plots. To be fair, we never know when any of us are going to need our plots.
Right.
She wanted to make sure they were ready. But I got the husband on the phone in the hospital dying, which I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what to say. And I just prayed for the words. And I was thinking, the only thing that somebody wanted me to do is call and give them the answer. And thankfully, they had everything taken care of. And so I said to the man on the phone, I said, you don't have any worries. You've gotten everything taken care of. And he replied back to me, I don't have any worries. And I thought, whoa, that was powerful. That was a powerful moment. I'm like, I didn't realize that was my job.
That has to make you feel good to be able to help other people remove that stress. What other kinds of rewards have you received through this kind of work?
I enjoy being an educator. I think that perhaps when you and I grew up, we could almost envision what would follow once someone had died. There was some variation of what might happen, but very often there would be a church service. There'd probably be a visitation before that. The family then maybe would go out to the cemetery for the burial. Small group. The larger group perhaps would stay behind with the church ladies in the basement, who then wondered if everyone would drink all the coffee before the family came back from the cemetery. Once everyone came back, they'd serve the ham sandwiches with unbuttered rolls. It was pretty standard with very little differences. And maybe that's just my kind of myopic upbringing. But today's options, I didn't know any of this was a possibility.
Does that mean that there's an increase in people wanting to individualize the services to make them super unique for each individual?
I would say that urns, cremation and urns have changed the world more than anything. Recently, in the Madison area, one funeral home said they were seeing 60% cremation, and others said 70%. In North America, there is an association that advocates for cremation and monitors those statistics. They predict that North America will plateau at 80% cremations. We're never going to see 100% cremation. That just isn't going to happen. Some people will never opt for that. We are seeing a lot more cremations, and that is where the differences are coming in. With cremation, there's a lot of flexibility. The timing, for instance, an urn burial might take place within days, weeks, months, years. So there's a time. There's also, where is that urn going to go? I have gone to senior centers in the area talking about that topic. Options for urn placement. I love the creativity that people have with urns. The placement isn't always thought out. I heard one time a sister placed the urn of their mom in her brother's trunk. She thought he wasn't looking. He saw her do it. He turned and said, "I thought you were taking mom home." No one had a plan. No one had a plan for where the urn would go. Sometimes we'll see that people will want to bring the urn home as part of the grieving process, as part of the healing process. Once they are ready, then they'll bring the urn to the cemetery. So what can you do with an urn nowadays? The options of what you can do with an urn seem endless. You can bury an urn, 3 urns in one grave site. So if you already bought a traditional plot, no problem. You can bury the urn. You can put the urn in a niche. What's a niche? A niche is a small cabinet. It can be made out of granite or glass, and there's rows of them. One option for urns is columbariums. What's a columbarium? Also, I feel like cemeteries could have a spelling bee, because these big words and their spellings, even the word cemetery, really would be a benefit to those who want to learn and better vocabulary and spelling. A columbarium is a collection of niches. In each niche, you can place 1 urn, maybe 2. It's kind of like a bookcase, but with a panel on the front. These columbariums can be granite, or we also have glass niches. Then, I didn't realize until I started this job that there is such a thing as a cremation bench. I think I might have said, a what? Looking out on the park, you will see benches. Some might have 2 legs, but some might have a solid base. If they have a solid base with no opening in the middle, it's possible that there might be cremains in that bench. Each bench can be cored for 3 individuals. The cremains are placed in the bench, and of course the bench seat goes on top. I didn't know this. I had no idea. We also have cremation kind of statues, things to help us remember and honor our loved ones. People are unique. So are the ways that they can be memorialized. I have a bias, of course, towards memorials and toward our obituaries. I'm not saying that anybody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. But I truly believe that each person on this planet who walked before us, alongside of us, or maybe even behind us and pushed us forward, deserves some kind of recognition or acknowledgement of a life lived. This gets at the core of human dignity. Every life has value, and in my mind should be acknowledged.
That's a good point. And we should take the opportunity to do that. And I like that people are taking it upon themselves to make sure that they are remembered in the way that they want to, rather than relying on family members piecing together their understanding of what mom or dad would like. I think that's got to be tremendous time saver for them. And it's also a good money saver, right? Can't you save money by doing this thing in advance rather than after somebody dies?
Definitely, I would say yes. Again, you're not going to be buying things based on grief. You're not going to be feeling pressure of a timeline to make purchases. In the industry, it's said that costs double every 10 years. And I've seen some drastic increases as I look at old deeds and I see that someone's grandpa decided to purchase a whole lot, a whole 12 graves, whereas today, sometimes it's a struggle to buy one. Now, I didn't do the inflation comparison and so forth, but things have changed.
So is it advantage or is it recommended that people do this kind of planning in advance?
Definitely.
What kinds of things are they paying you folks to provide or to cover? What are they paying a family services counselor to do for them?
At the cemetery, what you buy, you own. So a lot of people are picking out their final resting place. They are, as one man told me, he wants to know what the place is for the party, and then he'll plan everything else, because we absolutely do encourage everyone in Wisconsin, because some states can own both a cemetery and funeral home. In Wisconsin, here at the cemetery, people are picking their final resting place. Where do they want to be memorialized? Where do they want to be laid to rest? So if we're looking at a traditional burial, I would help them pick out a vault. Maybe they'd get a vault from us. Maybe they'd get a vault from the funeral home. That's where there's an overlap. But we go through a checklist for a traditional burial, and I break it down to 3 areas. One is the plot. Where would you like to have a plot? We have, like I said, 60 acres. Some are by trees, some are by a cemetery road. The second area that we look at is what we call burial essentials. Burial essentials include vaults and the open and close primarily. And the third area is the marker or the memorial. So those are kind of the 3 areas that I help people with and help make decisions and just start the conversation. And then if someone doesn't want to go in the ground, we have a couple landscapers who want nothing to do with plots and burials in the ground. We have mausoleum crypts. We have traditional crypts for caskets. And then for urns, we have the niches.
Okay, fair enough. So there are plenty of options for people to consider. Is it depressing for you to have to work with people in these kind of situations, or do you find a lot of hope and encouragement through it?
I want to say both. And I also want to say that I try to make people laugh, but that might sound wrong, because especially if it's an at-need situation, I think I always have a goal to make people laugh. That can be dangerous in this industry. Not everything is doom and gloom when you come into a mausoleum. People have to come into a mausoleum here because that's where our offices are. My office is literally in a mausoleum. Across from me, there are crypts. That shocks me, but it doesn't bother me. I think it keeps a good perspective. This is absolutely a challenging job. People handle grief in all different types of ways. There have been moments where I can feel the grief in the room. No one's crying, but you can feel the emotion. And how do I handle that? Just by having empathy, by helping them understand the process, the next steps, one at a time. and praying for the right words.
I can imagine. A lot of people don't like to talk about the deceased person. They just feel that if they do, their spouse or their kids are going to feel sad and it's going to make them feel bad, so they don't want to do that. But I found that to be exactly the opposite, that the people who have lost someone really want to share that person's story, and they want to talk about him or her and how he or she made a difference in their lives. What do you think?
Absolutely. It's been recommended that we ask about the decedent right away. Tell me about your loved one. Immediately asking about the loved one is not my approach. I will find ways as we are carrying on conversations to ask about their loved one, to learn about them. I always read the obits to learn as much as I can about the life lived and maybe how I can acknowledge that life lived.
Do you read that before you talk to people? Or
If I can.
Okay.
Sometimes I can. It depends. If I can, I absolutely will.
Are people
Yes,
writing their own obits?
We don't help with the obits. The funeral home does. I hear they're using some AI tools. But if anybody, now I'm going to open up a door, but if anybody wants help, I may or may not have helped a few people write their own obits. I guess I always love reading about people, hearing people's stories.
I can tell when somebody's obit has been written by artificial intelligence. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yes.
So would you recommend that mom and dad write their own obit about what they want, the details they want to include?
I think mom and dad would probably freak out. So I would approach it by saying, let's write down some names. Let's double check some spellings that I don't know. Dad worked at the phone company. We had some fun with that with my father-in-law. The phone company. The phone company had umpteen different names. So we talked about that. We talked about the changes that he saw throughout his employment. Everybody's got a story to tell, and that's the beautiful thing of it. I get to hear those stories. I get to be with people at a very vulnerable moment, and it's an honor. It's an absolute honor to help them. And I just always hope that I'm doing the best that I can for the unique individuals before me.
That's really neat. Did you have to have any training for this job?
So I have a license to actually sell insurance for the funeral homes. I had initially thought about working and selling insurance, basically burial insurance. Initially, I had thought I would work on the funeral home side of things and help people make plans there. But the job that I saw that I wanted, once I had gotten a license to sell insurance, wasn't there. Nonetheless, I had learned some things. I took a course, and I asked the local funeral directors there, I said, what do you think I should do to get into this field? And both of them were from smaller communities. They said, can you embalm? And I thought the answer was no, but I went home. It was a 2-day course. So I went home. YouTube's got everything. And I looked at some kind of video and confirmed that the answer was no. Funeral directors are amazing people. Any funeral director who ever wants a pep talk should call me, because they are amazing human beings. The science that they know, the people skills, the hours, oh my goodness. I love funeral directors. But I found a job at a cemetery through my eyebrow person. My eyebrow person? What? Yes, I have very pale eyebrows. And so I have an eyebrow person. And her sister worked at a cemetery. And so I figured out that this family service counselor thing was an actual job. So that goes to tell you, if you're looking for some kind of job, talk about it. Talk about it, tell everyone. What's it going to hurt? Because you might find that open door. And here I am at a cemetery I wonder how I got here just about every day. And today was another day where I was greeted by that church cart. They call it a church cart. They call it a lot of different things. But you open that front door and there's the cart waiting for a casket. And today, it's not for me. And I have to appreciate that moment. I have to appreciate that moment, all the moments. That's what we got to do. Appreciate the moments.
That's right. If you could turn the clock back, is there anything you'd do differently with your life or your career?
Oh my goodness. People always say they don't have regrets. I have regrets, but would they have really benefited me? My professors, I don't know if your schooling led you to this, but I don't know how many classes I sat in, specifically Introduction to Journalism, that said, you will not make a lot of money. Do you still want to do this? Yes, I can't picture anything else. I just love writing. And then you have a family and you want a house and you think, but money isn't everything. I got to stay home with my kids. I got to freelance. And it was an interesting ride, and I think we all do the best that we can. Would I have done something different? Probably, maybe, from the money side, but the flexibility side, probably not. Probably not. And I think we're all on paths that we're supposed to be on.
I like to hear you say that, Rebecca, because too many people are talked out of doing what they are passionately feeling inside by well-meaning friends and relatives who tell them they need to do something more practical to make money. And yet
Absolutely.
You embraced journalism because you knew you loved to write, and you were utilizing that natural skill and those talents in that way. And that had to have been had to get you fired up.
Yes, absolutely. And now I wonder how all my journalism friends, some of who are underemployed, some have chosen self-employment. Greg, you've always been my hero for taking risks and doing things that I would never have been brave to, but I did do self-employment for writing. That was brave. I don't have an interest in doing that again, but I know several people, I don't know about you, several people who are unemployed, underemployed, or laid off, writers, marketing. But when somebody, here comes my mother's voice again. When somebody like my mother says, hey, why don't you go get a job in a factory? Then the next headline says that hundreds are being laid off in factories.
That's right. That sounds like my mom.
You just gotta go forward one day at a time, and you try to do your best to make a difference. I really do. Somehow, I have to remind myself, this is a privilege and an honor to be led into people's lives to talk about this topic. It's huge.
I'm glad to hear you say that as well. Yeah. Do you have any advice for people over 50 who may be struggling with trying to figure out what to do to give their lives more meaning and purpose? You found this through the back door. What kind of advice?
Yeah, if anybody has interest in this job, they should contact me through LinkedIn. It's a tough job. And you had talked about learning. How do I learn? Well, most of the learning is on the job. The company, of course, provides training, of course. I don't think you can ever get enough training. There's so many different scenarios. But the fun thing about this job, in terms of age, at 52, people think I know a lot. They don't know that I've only been doing this for a year and a couple months. They think maybe I'm the manager just because of my age. It's like a reversed ageism. But I also think it's a benefit because you can pull from some of your life experiences in some of your new jobs. And I think this is one of those. And I know you've done interviews with people who work with senior citizens. I think that working to help, especially a generation that's before us, folks who are older than us, can be very rewarding. And that's one area that I would encourage people to look at. It isn't about the money.
That's right. If you want to make an impact in your life and build a legacy, doing that kind of thing and serving others is going to go a long way to building that.
That's for sure.
Besides LinkedIn, are there any other ways that people can contact you?
I think LinkedIn is probably the best bet.
Okay. We'll be sure to link to that. So thank you for sharing your story with me today. I really appreciate it. I know you're making a difference in the lives of people during a very vulnerable moment, and you are helping those people who are planning in advance to help their families in what will someday become a very vulnerable moment. So I appreciate you sharing your story with me today.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you very much.
As my conversation with Rebecca Kanable wrapped up, what really stood out was the meaning that she's found in this chapter of her life. After turning 50, Rebecca discovered that her work was not about selling plots or markers, it was about offering people peace of mind. She is helping individuals and families face a difficult reality with clarity, dignity, and compassion. In her words, she realized that she is in the peace of mind business. Rebecca also talked about how being invited into these deeply personal moments is an honor. She sees every conversation as an opportunity to listen, to educate, and to help people feel less alone. That sense of service, especially when talking to those in older generations, is what gives her work lasting purpose. If you'd like to connect with Rebecca or learn more about her work, the best way to reach her is through LinkedIn. Rebecca's story encourages us to think differently about planning ahead and reminds us that meaningful work can still be discovered even later in life and sometimes in the most unexpected places. That's all for this week's show. If you'd like to start living a more meaningful life, I encourage you to download our free guide to finding purpose, which is available at www.forwardfrom50.com. I'll have another inspirational interview on the next episode of the Forward from 50 podcast. Thanks for listening, and if you like the show, please consider leaving a review wherever you download the episodes.